Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to continue our series on Supabase and we are going to learn about Google authentication using Supabase. We are going to learn how we can perform the Google One-Tap sign-in. And for that, we are going to use the same project that we have created in the previous video. So please feel free to check that video first and then continue this particular video. Having said that, let's get straight into it. So there are a couple of configuration that we need to do on the Supabase side. Then we will actually dive into the Android side. So first of all, what we need to do here is that we have to go to this authentication tab and then go to this providers. So in the previous video, we were using email provider. So that is why we enabled it in the previous video. But now we are going to use Google. So we have to open up this. So we have to fill up all these fields first, and then we can actually move to the Android Studio and use the library provided by Supabase to perform the Google One-Tap sign-in. Okay. So to get all these values, what we need to do is we have to open up the Google Cloud Console, and then we have to create the OAuth IDs for web and Android. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So once you open up your Google Cloud Console, you will get screen something like this. The URL is console.cloud.google.com, and what we need to do here is we need to create a project first. So we will click on the select a project, and since we don't have any project, I will click on new project and I will give the name as learn Supabase and I will click on create. So you can see at the top it is creating the project, so we have to wait for it to create the project. Once it has created the project, just click on select project. Now our project is selected. The next thing what we need to do is we have to go to the search bar and we have to search OAuth and choose this OAuth consent screen. And you will get two user types that you have to select. So we are going to select external and we are going to click on create. And here what we need to do is we have to fill up all the fields required for the Google OAuth consent. Okay, so we are going to say learn Supabase as the app name. The support email would be this, and the last is the required field, which is this email address, that is developer content information. You can add any email you want over here. I'm going to add the same email ID and you have to click on save and continue. So the next screen is for scopes. You can add the scopes if you want, but we don't require it for the time being. So we are going to just click on save and continue. And the next is for test users. Again, if you want, you can add test users. I'm not going to add any, and click on save and continue. And this is the summary. And we can just go back to the dashboard if you want. But what we need to do here is we need to create credentials. That is, we want to create the OAuth client ID for web as well as for Android. So we are going to click on this, which is credentials. And here what we're going to do is we are going to create credentials. Okay. And we are going to choose OAuth client ID. Now it will ask you to choose the platform, I mean the application type basically. So we are going to choose web application first, and you can name anything you want. I'm keeping it as default, that is web client 1. And what we need to do here is that we need to add this authorized redirect URI. Okay, so basically we need to provide the URI that after the authentication is successful, it will redirect to. So we're going to add URI, and this URI is basically, if you go back to the Supabase dashboard, is this, the callback URL. So we're going to copy this, go back, and we're going to paste this over here. And we are going to just click on create. Now we will get the client ID and the client secret over here. So we are going to copy both of those values and paste it in the Supabase dashboard. So we are going to copy the client ID first. I'm going to paste it over here, go back, copy the client secret and paste it over here. Now the third thing that is required is the authorized client ID for Android One-Tap and Chrome extension. So for this, we need to again create a newer credential, but this time we need to create a credential for Android. So we are going to again click on create credential and choose on OAuth client ID. And this time we are going to choose the application type as Android. You can name anything you want and keeping it as default, that is Android client 1. For the package name, what we have to do is we have to open up our Android project. So since we are using the same project, I'm going to copy the package name from any of these files at the very top. It is there, as you can see. So for the project side, what I've done is that I've created a different branch, but I'm using the same project, and we are going to make some changes so that we are just only going to focus on the authentication via Google part. Now we will go back to the cloud platform and we're going to paste the package name. Now we require the SHA1 certificate fingerprint. Now to get this, there are multiple ways, but the simplest way is via Gradle. So let's go back to the Android Studio and we'll go to Gradle. We are going to choose this execute Gradle task and we are going to search for sign, and you will get this option which says signing report. You will click on signing report and we are going to press enter. So once you run the Gradle task, it will perform a task and it will generate the different keys. So from here, we are going to choose the SHA1 key. We are going to copy the entire key, go back to the console and paste it. Once we have done all these things, we are just going to click on create. And now we are able to get the client ID, and we're going to copy this client ID, go back to the Supabase dashboard and paste it over here in the authorized client ID section. And once we have done all these three steps, once we have filled up all these three fields, we're going to enable the sign in with Google switch and we're going to click on save. So now we have successfully configured the Supabase with all the different client IDs and secret keys, whatever that was required. Now we have to finally go back to the Android Studio and use the library provided by Supabase to perform the Google one-tap sign-in. So as I said earlier, I'm going to use the same project that we had worked on the previous video. But what I have done here is that I have removed some of the functionalities that we worked on in the previous video. Mainly, I have removed the section for login and sign up via email. I have kept the logout part. And apart from that, all the other methods are still there for saving the token and getting the token. Those things are still there. But all the other functionalities have been removed from this particular branch. So don't worry about the code. I will provide you the GitHub repo link in the description. Feel free to check it out and you will be easily able to follow it. Now what we need to do here is we need to add a dependency first that will help us to perform the one-tap sign-in. Okay, let's do that. So what we need to do now is we have to open up the build.gradle.kts and I'm going to add it just below the go to KT because we still require go throughs to perform the logout. So I'm going to keep this, but we are going to add this compose auth dependency. Now this will help us to perform the authentication via Google. The next thing that we need to do here is that we need to have the Google client ID with us in the project. So for that, what I am going to do is I am going to use these same steps that I did earlier, where I'm going to add it in the local properties and use it via build Gradle. But you can feel free to use it directly if you are learning it for the very first time, or you can use different ways to protect your keys. Okay, let me add the key to the local properties and I will get back. So I've added the Google client ID in my local properties and I'm going to read it via build.gradle. So this is how I have done it. You can do it in the same way if you want, and you can find out how we can do this. It's pretty simple actually. You have to just use Gradle local properties to read the file and then read the property and then create a build config field in the similar fashion. Or if you're just trying to learn, you can directly use the client ID in the code itself. It's totally up to you. So by Google client ID, what I mean is this client ID at the very top that we got when we created the OAuth client ID for the web application. Okay, so we're going to use this client ID in our project. So having said that, once you have your client ID in your project in any variable or anywhere, it's totally up to you, then we can proceed forward to actually use the compose auth. Now we will go to the Supabase client, and here what we're going to do is we are going to install the compose auth, and it requires Google native login, which requires the server client ID. And for me, I will get it from build config. That is Google client ID. For you, it might be a different variable, might be a constant in your project, or you can directly add your server client ID here itself. It's totally up to you. So once we have added this, what we can do is now we can go back to the main activity in our main screen. So as I said earlier, I kept the logout section, the logout button as it is. I have this section also as it is, where we were checking the status or the state of the user state and performing the different tasks accordingly. What we can do here is we can remove this check. Actually, it doesn't really matter. We can just keep it as text over here, because at no time in the entire project it will be empty. We will have a definitive value. Okay, that is why we don't require that particular check. Now what we are going to do here is that we are going to add a button, and we are going to add the logic to perform the login with Google. So first of all, let's add a button. So I'm going to add a button over here, and we will fill the on click section later. Now let me just add the text, and the text would be login with, or let's say login via Google. Now for the on click part, what we need to do here is that we need to first of all at the very top create a variable. We can call it anything. I'm just going to call it as action. This would be equal to client, or in this case it would be Supabase client. We can just simply import client here. You can write client dot compose auth, and after that we will write remember login with Google. Okay, now after writing this, inside this it provides us with two different lambdas, on result and on fallback. I think it's just fallback, not on fallback, just fallback. Okay. Now we're going to just work with the on result section. We are not going to work with the fallback. If you want, you can add the logic in the fallback. It's totally up to you. It's, as the name suggests, if there is any fallback that occurs when we are performing this particular login with Google, then it will go inside this lambda. Otherwise, it will go inside the on result. Now, on result, what it does is it provides with you the native sign-in result. Okay. Now, what we can do here is that either we can check the state of the native sign-in result and perform whatever the logic we want over here, or we can make the project consistent by performing all the different user state changes in the view model itself. So we are going to do the second option, which is going to perform the changes in the view model itself. Okay, so let's do that. So let's open up the Supabase auth view model that we have created in the previous video itself. We are going to add a method here to check the different native sign-in result values that we are receiving, and we will update the user state accordingly. So I'm going to add the method here. I'm naming it as check Google login status. You can name it anything you want, and it will take up two parameters, context and result. Okay, and what we're going to do here is that when the result is success, we're going to save the token as we did in the previous video when we were logging in via email, and then we are going to update the value of user state with success and the message as logged in with via Google. We can also update the status of the user state for the error section. So what we can do here is that it provides us the message also along with the status, so we can get that message via something like this. We have to write result as native sign in result dot error dot message, and then we can just simply update the user state value. We're going to say user state dot error, and we're going to pass the message over here. Okay. Similarly, for network error also, you can add the same thing over here. You can just simply copy and paste. Okay, it's totally up to you. And we can change this to network error. Okay. And actually we can remove this entire section. We can just simply write result.message, and here also as result.message, because it is already checking the type of result here itself. So we can just simply write result.message. Once we have done this, what we need to do is we have to go back to the main activity, and over here we will just get the result, and we will call the view model dot check Google login status. We will pass the context as well as the result. Okay. So this entire block is ready, as well as the view model is also ready, where we are just updating the user state value depending upon the result that we are providing in the parameter. So what we have to do next is to actually start the action. So inside the on click block, we will just write action dot start flow. Okay. Now what should happen here is that now once I run the application or install the application, the user shouldn't be logged in. So for the very first time, what should happen here is that it should go to the launch effect. It should call is user logged in, as we did in the last video also. And here it should give me this message that user not logged in. Or we can just make it more readable. We can just say user is not logged in. And then if we click on the button, what should it do is it should open up the bottom sheet, which would be a native Google one-tap sign-in bottom sheet, and we have to choose the account via which we want to sign in with Google. The only catch here is that there should be at least one Google account connected to your Android phone, and I would think there won't be any case where there is no account connected to an Android phone. I would say that 99% of the time there will be an account connected to your Android phone. Okay. So let's run the application and check if it is working fine or not. So once we choose the account, it should update the status depending upon this success and save the token, and then update the message to logged in via Google. Let us check. So as you can see, the very first time when the app is installed, we are getting this user is not logged in because there is no token that is there in the shared preference. Now, once I click on the login via Google button, it should take some time and it should open up this bottom sheet. So for me, since there is only one account, I'm getting this particular window, but for you, there might be a case that there are multiple accounts and then you have to choose among them to continue. Okay. So if I click on continue, it should change the status to logged in via Google. So this means that we are able to successfully log in via Google. Now to check if we are still logged in or not, what we can do here is we can just simply rerun the application. But this time what should happen here is that since we have already saved the token, instead of getting this user is not logged in, we should get this message which is user already logged in. Or we can just say user is already logged in. Let us rerun the application. And you can see it is going to the login state and we are getting this user is already logged in. That means that we are able to successfully save the token as well as perform the one-tap Google sign-in. And to verify this, if we have successfully logged in the user via Google, what we can do is we can go back to the Supabase and we can check in the authentication section whether a new user has been added or not. So in the authentication section, we can see that there is a new email ID that has been added and the provider is Google this time. Okay, so that means that we were able to successfully use the Google one-tap sign-in to perform the Google authentication. Now there is one more thing, one small thing that we can also do here is that instead of using the default button provided by the Jetpack Compose, we can actually use the Google button. Okay, so that is also actually provided by Supabase. So there is a different dependency that we need to add for that to work. Let us do that. It would take like hardly 1 or 2 minutes to actually do that. We are going to open up the build.gradle. Last time we added compose auth. This time what we have to add is a different dependency which is called compose auth UI. Now what this does is it provides you with the authentication UI, basically the buttons like sign in with Twitch, or let's say log in with Google, and like these types of buttons that you see on different websites where you have these options to log in with. Okay, let us sync the project. Now go back to the main activity, and we are going to keep the generic this login via button of Android default style as it is. But now what we're going to do is we are going to add another button, which is going to be an outlined button. Okay. And inside this, what we have to do here is actually, we don't require this. We're going to add content. And inside the content, we need to add something called as provider button content. And inside the provider, we're going to add Google. And you can see it says that it is an experimental API. So you can just click on this opt-in for Supabase experimental on the main screen. So as you can see, it is just an experimental API at the moment, but it is highly useful. Or otherwise, you can actually create the button yourself. It's not that hard. So on the click of this button, we are going to again use the same action.start flow. Okay, let me format the code. So we have added two buttons now. We have the default login via button, and we are going to add this outline button also. Now this outline button will automatically have the Google login button style button. Okay, let us rerun the application and check if we are getting that button or not. So as you can see, we are getting this login with Google button. So this is this particular outline button where we have provided the content as provider button content with provider Google. There are different providers you can add, and it will give you a different UI for the button accordingly. Just to verify once that everything is fine, I'm going to again log in with Google, but this time with this button, and it should work fine since we're going to call the same thing as we did for this button. So just do this. You can log in with Google, continue, and as you can see, we are getting this logged in via Google. So now we were able to perform the same action as we did before. So that's pretty much it for this particular video. So in this particular video, we have learned how we can perform the Google one-tap sign-in easily with Supabase. We also learned how we can add this beautiful social login buttons using the Supabase APIs as well. So if you have stayed till the end, please feel free to subscribe the channel and like the video if you find this useful. Share this video with your friends who are learning Supabase right now. And if you have any suggestions for me for any video ideas or anything, please feel free to write in the comment section. If you have any doubts, please write in the comment section, and see you in the next video. Bye.